Hello everyone, welcome back. Welcome back to the Technology Innovation Hub. So it's going to be a session from Oracle portal. This time it is for the beginners, so Cp1 level. Let me share the screen. And we have been doing, if you take a look at the channel under Oracle portal. So this is what we have been doing up to CP4, CP1 lesson 4, right? So basic competency lesson 4, we have completed 4 sessions on building basic competencies. So let's continue from there. I think if you can remember, we just completed this document, right? The sessions were done based on this document. Getting familiar with Oracle 12c, right? You may remember we got the dual databases in the same host, 12c and 19c. And competency level 1, Cp1. So that's the level 1 Cp1 competency. Under that, we have done 4 sessions. So let's continue with the 5th session. And we have completed this document. I think you may remember the last thing we discussed was the Oracle product version numbers, right? Major product number, release number, like we discussed, right? So next in line is login process, database login process, right? So let's continue that one. So this is the next document in line. I'll upload this one with the sessions, ongoing sessions, right? So this is a little bit, we have a little bit activities to be done. Is 45 minutes, the one was 30 minutes. Again, it still is competency level 1. So this is going to be the 5th session on competency level 1, right? So activity 2, earlier we were doing activity 1, connecting to an Oracle database and building awareness of Oracle instance. Open a terminal, yeah, because now we know basically what is an instance is, but we didn't went into details of instance architecture and components we didn't do. But we saw the instance startup process and shut down. Very basically we did that, right? Okay, let's continue. Right, the first thing what is say, you know, now switch -Oracle that you all know, right? And I think we have discussed the difference between hyphen mark and not put in the hyphen mark, right? Yeah, so that is what echo. Yeah, we can see the current value of this variable, echo Oracle SID, right? And in front of the environment variable Oracle SID, to recall the value of Oracle SID, echo command and with the dollar, right? And as for the output, ORC will indicate the, or you can read that and see. SID is the system identification, right? It's not the session ID. Session ID is a different thing, because when you have different multiple databases in the same machine, in production it is not recommended to have multiple databases in the same host, but for learning purpose, testing purpose, right, we are doing that. So if you have that, before logging to the Oracle database, we need to select which database we are connecting to, right? So to inform operating system that we are connecting to this database, right? So what is the variable? The variable is Oracle SID, right? So this is an environment variable which is available in Windows, Linux, and other systems as well. So what we can do, we know this. I think we have done this. We are setting the value set Oracle underscore SID. That is in Windows. In Linux, we say export Oracle underscore SID. So this is what, right? So once you set the value, if you want to recall it, right? If you want to take the value back, what you can do, you can echo that. The dollar will recall the value of the variable, right? In Windows, you just have to say set. In Linux, we can say echo and the variable name, right? So let's see how the values are going to come in, because even if you don't set, we know we have the batch profile in place. So the value will get default to what is the value in the set in the batch profile. Because in Linux, we can have batch profiles, like in Windows desktop profiles. Linux, we have batch profiles. Per user, we have batch profiles, right? So here in Linux, to manage Oracle, we use Oracle user. That's the standard. So for Oracle user, Oracle database, right? So grid, we have different user grid, right? So, but for Oracle database software, we are managing with Oracle user, right? So for him, we can have a separate batch profile, and in that we can set the value, what is the default value for Oracle SID, right? But then again, having set in the batch profile, if you come back to the prompt like this, prompt means in the terminal, the prompt like this, and if you set the value here, what will happen? It will override the value in the batch profile, right? Okay. So let's get into that one and see. Actually, we can check that one. Okay, let's go to our practical environment. Right. So yeah, so let's exit from here. Right. Edit off. We can check the current value. We can say before that, this is what I was telling earlier, right? So we can just say su hyphen oracle, right? You know this, but these are very basic, doesn't matter since it is the beginner session. I am doing all these explanations. So when you say su hyphen oracle, what will happen? This hyphen means it will take you to the home directory of this particular user, oracle user, plus it will execute the bash profile. So hyphen is very important, right? So now if you type pwd here, what's going to happen? You can see you are in his oracle home. This is the home for oracle user, right? Even like in Windows desktop, Linux, we have for every user we have a home directory, right? Okay. So, but what happens if you do it like this, right? So let's say you are doing like this, is you without putting hyphen. If you just say like it is switch, that's true, right? Switch users, switch user, it is switch. But if you type pw and c, you are not in your home directory, right? You are where you are, right? You are means now I have typed the command and you not one, so you are in that directory. It will not switch to your home directory. Not only that, it will not execute your bash profile as well, right? So therefore, make sure you are going using the hyphen mark, right? Otherwise, you have to load the bash profile type in the source command. So let's learn those things later. So let me exit back again. So you do it in the correct way, right? All right. So then what you can do, if you want to see the current value of my Oracle SID, simply we can say echo dollar Oracle is in capital, right? Variable is in capital, SID. So you can see my current value is ORCL, right? So that means I am, in this case, I am heading to connect to a database called ORCL, right? So the reason can be this. If you take a look at like this, okay, let's take a look at the batch profile, vi dot bash underscore profile. Right. So in this case, I have used a new method to set the batch profile. So what happens is this is my batch profile for that user. It says go into this script, right? Right. This is for easy management. We are not directly putting the contents in the batch profile. We are redirecting into another script within the home directory of the user, right? So what will happen when it comes to the batch profile? It will execute dot is there, right? At the beginning, you can see the dot is there, right? So it will execute this particular script, right? So let's get into that script. So script is this, right? So let's vi that one. Let's take a look at the content of that, right? You look at the content of that. So these are the contents. So you can see the values are what you can see: export Oracle ORCL unique name, and you can see the value of this ID. So what is the value of this ID? ORCL, right? So that's the reason as soon as you switch to the Oracle user, this content will get executed and your value being set to ORCL, Oracle SID variable value, because we are setting it here. All right. And you can see all other various values as well. So we'll come back to that one in detail later. Right. So Oracle SID. So what we can do something like this, right? Okay. Now, okay. Before that, let's do this. Okay. Let me connect, right? So I'm going to connect now. This as is DBA, right? So now it says 12.2. Yes, because I am executing 12.2, right? And it says connected, right? So if I want to check which SQL plus I am executing, which version, I can say which SQL plus I'm running from this home, u01 12, this home, right? And further, I can check, we know that. Why? Because you see, as soon as this message, we have learned it, this looks like the database is up and running, right? So we can check it further, ps minus ef grep command, right? Grep pmon, process monitor. You notice, yes, there's a process monitor running for ORCL. So this is an indication that ORCL database is up and running with this PID, okay? So P1 is one of the major background processes for, we learn this command. ps minus -cfdep is a very simple command in Linux to confirm which database is up and running. We will learn the background process later. Process monitor, system monitor, checkpoint, and DB writer. A lot of background processes are there. These are key background processes, right? Compulsory background processes for Oracle database to up and run, or Oracle instance to up and run, right? So we have a database name of RCL. So that's why right away we were able to connect to that run. Okay, right. So let me do something like this. I'm going to change the value, right? Okay, let's clear this. I'm going to say like this, and you set the value, right? I'm going to set, we didn't set the value, no? Okay, we will set, I'm telling set, there's no dollar when you're setting, right? When you set, let's say I'm going to say value for ABC, right? Set Oracle SID ABC. Right? So do I have something called ABC running here? I don't have anything called ABC. So if I try to connect now, what? See, let's see what will happen. It's still ORA. No, I did a mistake. No, what is a mistake? Set is the command for Windows, right? So it still is connects to the default because set is not going to set a value, right? That's a mistake. Let's come out from it, right? I have to say export, not set. Better that you learn that one as well. There is a Windows one, export Oracle, right? Okay. Now I set the value where I don't have such a database up and running, right? So now if you see, now it will say, earlier it says nicely what it said earlier, it said connected to enterprise edition and it displays where it is connected to. But now only the SQL version is being given. It says connected to idle instance. The reason is there is no such process or such database running with the name ABC, right? So that is the impact of the Oracle SID value, right? SID, system identification, which tells the operating system SQL Plus is going to look for such database name with that ID, system identification, right? So that's what the document says initially. So let's continue. Variable, yeah, capital, you can check explanation is there, and yes. Now coming back to the bash file, this is what I just showed you earlier. So the export, this is what? This is the value, right? So in the bash file, we are setting this value like that. Okay. All right. So let's continue. Now the connection. We learn the SID value. And when you're connecting, because you may remember here I used, right, this one. Still we are not aware of these things. So I'm just typing the connection command, right? You can see I'm just telling SQL Plus. We know SQL Plus is the tool, client tool to interact with an Oracle database, right? But what is this and what is this? We need to understand, right? So let's continue. We can see SQL Plus is the tool. Sys is the user, in this case, super user, owner of the Oracle database at database level, right? Because at OS level, we have a user called internal, right? Operating system level, where database is not up yet, right? Because we can keep the service running, right? Internal process running without the database is up and run. So that's owned by a user called internal, right? But when it comes to the database, the super user of the database is sys. Of course, internal and sys are equal, right? So then we say super user and as sysdba, right? So this is what a specific role for these super users. Normally, sysdba is by default available for sys by default. But if we want, we can grant this specific role for other users as well, right? Because most of the cases by default, it allows passwordless authentication. We don't need to have password if you are a sysdba privileged user by default, but it's a security risk. We need to restrict that one, but by default, it allows. Let's check that, right? And I said role, right? So we have roles like this, system operator role is there, and data guard role, likewise backup roles. So for the time being, let's take this sysdba is a super user role, which is available for sys by default, right? So it's a super user. So that's why we can right away, explanation is there. You can see here, no password given, then what's going to happen? OS authentication will take place, right? The OS must be an administrator user. This is a default behavior. Yes. Security issues, system admin have super user access level. Yeah. It's recommended to disable in production. Yes, that is what, right? So what it says, now let's again go back to practical. Now look at this. I'm not typing any password, no, just pressing enter, right? So let's set the value to the correct one, right? So if I exit from here and switch it, it will set it back because bash file will get executed. No, so no need to set it manually. So this is what happens. I'm not giving any password, but right away it connects. One of the reasons there are prerequisites for passwordless authentication. Actually, what happens is, as you saw the document, it does something called OS authentication, right? Because Oracle database authentication, there are different types, right? Network authentication, role-based, external, OS, database, likewise, right? So here what we do, OS level authentication, because I'm not giving the password, right? And for that one to be success, I need to log into the operating system as an administrator user, right? So my OS user should be administrator user. Here I have logged as root, so root is the super user for OS, so no issues. It has admin privileges, so it will grant me to do operating system authentication, right? So that is what it says here. But it says again, it is not recommended in production. We need to disable it. We will learn it how to disable it later, because we need to put some entries in SQLnet.authentication, uh, SQLnet.oracle, right? So we will learn it later. SysDB is a special role. Okay. Finally, connected to idle instance. Idle instance means database is down, right? So in my case, you saw the database didn't say idle instance because my database is up. Because now again, you saw idle instance when I set to a value which is not a database, right? Because here you can see ABC, there's no such database running called ABC. So therefore it says idle instance. You saw that one, right? And even let's check it. Now, in my case, I have no, right? So I have a database. Now let's say shut immediate. So I'm shutting it down, right? So it is shut down. Now my value, let's check the value after shutting down as well, right? You can check the value. Echo again here on the SQL. No, we can do it, but let's do it here. Echo roller oracle underscore SID. So this is my value, correct value ORCL, because there is a database with ORCL, but now it's shut down. No. So now if I type ps minus ef grep, you can see earlier the process ORCL was there, but now it's missing, right? It's not there. So therefore the database is down. So now if I try to do SQL plus, this is a idle instance because my DB is down, right? But still OS authentication happens, right? So that's why it happens. We are another user called internal, but still database is down. So but earlier, even if I set to a value, Oracle SID value for a database which is not having, it will be the same state, because in this case, I have a ORCL database, but it is down. But if I set to a value which I'm not having a database, that was the same situation. So the same message will appear connected to idle instance, right? So that is what the document also says. So about sys and sysdb, SQL plus sysdb. So sys is our user. This is the specific role, and it does OS authentication by default, right? Right. So let's check further. It says startup failure processing parameter. Yeah. Parameter file. Right. Let's check that one as well. Right. Now, in this case, actually what in the document, what it has done, let's do the same thing, right? So I'm going to set for a value, which is back again. tnhoracle SID ABC, right? I'm going to go to SQL Plus, and now I'm typing startup because I don't have such database. So this is what happens, right? This is the same thing. So what's going to happen? It says failure processing system parameters could not open parameter file init abc.tora. So there is no such database, right? Because what Oracle does, when I type startup command, you know what the startup command does? It's trying to start the Oracle instance. So for Oracle instance to start, the fundamental requirement is parameter file. You will learn it more detail later. Parameter file, we have two types, SP file, key file. That is the parameter file and the text parameter file, right? Because it defines the values for the Oracle instance, memory structure sizes and the version, and a lot of settings are there, right? So there are more than 3,000 parameters with the hidden parameters in Oracle database, right? More than 3,000 with the hidden, right? But we are not going to touch all the parameters. We can learn up to the basic parameters which are less than 100, right? So we will take a look at that one later. So this is what happens. So if the database is not there, that means there is no parameter file. So it gives an error telling unable to identify such parameter file in a default location. So this is a location Oracle checks by default, DBS. We'll take a look at those in later more detail, right? In Linux, it checks default in this place. Right, so that is, yeah, now if I exit back again, and if I set the value to the correct database, right, so ORCL, which has everything, I have parameter file as well, right, so we can check it, right. So if you go to that place, CD, let's go there, and you can see the parameter file, right. You go here, change that directory, and if you type ls, you will see SP file. I am having SP file ORCL. So that is the server parameter file, right? We will learn what is SP file. Here by default, since there is nothing for this name, it looks for the init file because there's no SP file. By default, Oracle priority gives for the server parameter file. It's a dynamic file, right? So runtime modifications are possible. Let's check it later. So we have the SP file for our normal database, ORCL, which is available, right? So what we can do, we can right away go to SQL Plus and we can just type the startup command, right? It will start. Right? Right. So yes, connecting port, SSTVA, yeah. Okay. Right. Let's stop here this session. I will continue the next session with the document, right? And all right. So enjoy the questionnaires also at the end. Hope I'll meet you soon. Okay. Have a great time. Bye bye.